And how does this affect our practice? It's pretty awful, actually. It affects our relationships with our clients. We're over-explaining our thoughts to them. We're over-preparing their cases. We may be hesitant to give them a firm opinion about their case. We may undervalue their case because we're questioning if we're real lawyers. It may affect our professional growth. We may turn down a case that could be very good, but because it's a little bit out of our comfort zone, we think we're not the right attorney to handle it.
Welcome to the Free Lawyer Podcast. I'm your host, Gary Miles.
Well, I hope you guys had simply an amazing weekend. So picture this. You're standing in a courtroom, decades of experience behind you, awards lining your office walls, clients who specifically seek you out. And yet there's that voice in your head whispering, when will they figure out I'm not a real lawyer? I remember sitting in my corner office, 50 years old, surrounded by success, but still wondering, when was I going to grow up and become a real lawyer? If you have ever felt that way, you are not alone. And today we're going to talk about why even the most accomplished attorneys feel like frauds, but more importantly, how to break free from that mindset. There really is an epidemic in the legal practice surrounding what some people call imposter syndrome. I talk to a lot of lawyers, and I have for years. I coach many, but I talk to a lot that I don't coach. And so many of them struggle with this self-doubt, with this feeling like they're imposters, like they're frauds, that sometime they're going to be found out as not being a real lawyer or the lawyer that they are thought to be. And there's such a contrast between the extremely confident exterior that we all present, wearing powerful suits or dressing so professionally, having a commanding courtroom presence, speaking loudly, authoritatively. But inside we have such doubts. We question ourselves. And lawyers are particularly susceptible to imposter syndrome because we're expected to be so good. We're never allowed to show weakness. We're supposed to always have the answers, but inside we doubt ourselves. And I remember so well back when I was in my early 50s, at the pinnacle of my success, trying a lot of cases and being successful, being very busy, having a full caseload, highly respected by my clients, winning cases, running my firm. But I honestly thought that this all just seemed pretend, like a dream, like I wish I was a real lawyer like the other lawyers I knew. It was such a strange feeling. And this is the paradox. Those who doubt themselves the most are usually the most conscientious attorneys. It seems like the more conscientious we are, the more devoted we are to our clients, the more we question whether we are actually real lawyers. And why is it? Why is it that sometimes the very best lawyers question themselves? Some of it is our professional perfectionism. We are trained to find flaws. And so what do? We look at ourselves. I'm not that good at this. I struggle with that. I have a weakness here. We scrutinize ourselves internally because our whole mindset is to find mistakes, to find flaws. We also deal with cases at very high stakes. I did family law the last 15 years of my career, and winning and losing often meant such a huge difference to our client and the custody decisions about their children. Our decisions affect the lives of our clients in so many ways. If you handle a big personal injury case where your client is deserving of compensation, and if it doesn't work out, your client may have nothing. And that weighs on us, doesn't it? And so often we compare ourselves to others. We see other lawyers who just seem to have it all together. They may be progressing faster than us or winning more cases, and we look at them and we wish we could be as good as they are. And also what I've learned is the further we advance in our career, the more these feelings develop. Because we might have been a good associate, a good second chair, a good trial lawyer, but now we have a big case all on our own. Or now we're an equity partner and supposed to bring in business, and we're not nearly as good at it as the other equity partners. Whatever it is, whatever new stage we reach, the imposter syndrome rises its ugly head at us again. So between the perfectionism, the internal scrutiny of ourselves, the high stakes of our case, how we might compare ourselves to others, we're often very successful lawyers who question if we really are. And how does this affect our practice? It's pretty awful, actually. It affects our relationships with our clients. We're over explaining our thoughts to them. We're over preparing their cases. We may be hesitant to give them a firm opinion about their case. We may undervalue their case because we're questioning if we're real lawyers. It may affect our professional growth. We may turn down a case that could be very good, but because it's a little bit out of our comfort zone, we think we're not the right attorney to handle it. We have inefficiencies with our time management. We keep looking at our pleadings over and over again, making sure they're good, making sure they're just right, triple checking very simple documents sometimes. And that leads to situations where we can't possibly bill for all of the time we worked on a matter because we've wasted time because we're doubting ourselves. It affects the dynamics of our team. We may become a micromanager, or we may not be confident enough to be humble and authentic with our staff, so we may step away and just let things kind of run themselves. It affects our ability to have good work-life integration because we're so overworked at work trying to cover for this fraud that we feel we are, trying to hide it, trying to make it all better. And of course, it affects us financially. We undervalue our services. We don't have enough confidence in our value to our clients. We may not raise our rates when we should. We underbill our files and are afraid to say, this is what our rate is. And I'm sure you've experienced some of those problems. So I'm going to share with you now some tools that I think will be really helpful for you to break free from the prison of imposter syndrome. The first is to build your evidence file. Create a record of all your achievements. What cases did you win? What big motions did you win? What clients did you bring into the firm? Include your testimonials. What do clients say about you? How much have they complimented you or appreciated your performance? So include the cases you've won, the motions you've won, successful clients you've brought in, nice recommendations from clients. Include those in your evidence file and build it every day, every week. Keep it growing, because that'll be a reminder to you that you are real. You are the lawyer that won that case. You are the lawyer that brought that big client into your firm. Then create a circle of trusted colleagues. It could be a law firm associate. It could be a friend from law school. It could be a colleague in another firm where you just have a good relationship with him or her. But create a circle of other colleagues in the profession who you know, like, and trust. And how does that help? They're folks that you can talk to when you're struggling, when you're questioning yourself, when you're questioning your value. And this is really important too. Every day at the end of the day, I want you to spend 5 to 10 minutes reflecting and noting in a journal or on a spreadsheet or somehow these 3 things. One challenge that you handled very well, one struggle that you overcame, one success that you had in how you handled something. So write down one challenge you handled well. Write down one thing you learned. What was something you learned that day that you didn't know? One area where you grew or got better. And then finally, most importantly, one way you made a difference to a client, to a colleague, to a staff member. So every day, write down those 3 things. One challenge you handled well, one thing you learned, and one way you made a difference. Because it's a very positive thing, and it'll help you see you're not at all an imposter. The next tool is to try to grow through a manageable challenge. Try a slightly challenging case, something a little bit harder than something you tried before, something related to your field, but a little bit new and different. In other words, push your boundaries. Next, try a 3-step mindset reset technique. And basically, it's what would you tell a colleague in your situation? You're struggling, you're worried, you're doubting yourself. You're questioning if you're really who you say you are, if you're really a good lawyer. So first step is to acknowledge that doubt. Don't beat yourself up, but understand, be self-aware enough to acknowledge that doubt about yourself. And then see yourself talking to a colleague who has the same doubt about himself. In other words, see you talking to yourself as if you're a third party, one of those trusted friends that you have. What would you, as a trusted friend, tell yourself about that? What would be the advice that you would tell a colleague with the same doubts, the same concerns? And then take that advice. And it's so helpful if you could put yourself in the seat of another lawyer you're talking to about yourself. Hear the advice that colleague tells you, and then follow it. So acknowledge your doubt, think about what you tell a colleague in the same situation, and then apply that advice to yourself. And the 6th step is to use a mentor. I've seen with the lawyers I've coached and mentored that I see in them their success, and they don't. I see in them their talents, and they often don't. And I help them from working together to use these tools to see their value, to see their worth, to see how good they are. A mentor can be of incredible benefit to you in breaking free from imposter syndrome. And finally, refocus your efforts. Stop thinking about yourself and doubt yourself. Focus on your clients. What's a client you can help? How can you serve that client? Focus on being of service to your clients and using your skills for that. Kind of step away from worrying about yourself and if you're real, and focus on your clients and get into action serving that client. So these are the 7 steps. Build your evidence file, create a circle of trusted colleagues, see yourself giving advice to a colleague and then applying that advice to yourself, grow through handling a slightly new, slightly more challenging case, do the reflection protocol, one challenge you handle well, one thing you learned, one way you made a difference, use a mentor, huge benefit, and focus on serving your client. I had a very challenging slip and fall case where I represented a business which owned a factory where someone came in and fell. And the lawyer on the other side was so famous, so notorious for his inflammatory and really inappropriate comments in court. This was my first trial, and he was the most famous lawyer in town. Like, go figure. How did I deserve that? And I was full of doubts of myself. I really did see myself as, I'm not a real trial lawyer. He is a real trial lawyer. I am not. But I persisted. Despite all of his many tricks that he tried, I persisted. I ended up getting a defense verdict. And it made me realize that even though I saw myself as imposter, I really am, a real lawyer. And I think of another case we had where I represented a woman who had complained about sexual harassment of another woman, and the boss who she complained about didn't like it, retaliated against her, fired her, and made a statement we claimed was defamatory. So we were trying the defamation case. They were a big, powerful company. They had tons of resources. They hired one of the most expensive lawyers in town. And I was just me with a client. I felt overmatched. I felt David against Goliath. And I really began to doubt myself. Can I ever help my client receive the justice she deserves? But I persisted. I fought hard. And we ended up getting a huge verdict. We got punitive damages, and under the president was fired. And again, I doubted myself. I doubted if I was a real lawyer, but I realized I really was. And the judge afterward called me aside to say what a great job I did. And I used to do a lot of trucking defense work, and I won a whole bunch of cases in a row. But despite that, I still doubted myself. So these experiences are real. And I'm a successful trial lawyer, but I experienced them too. And that's why I wanted to share these 7 tools with you to build your evidence file, to create your circle of colleagues, to do this daily practice of noting your accomplishments, grow through manageable challenges, three-step mindset technique of giving your colleague advice and then applying it to yourself, using a mentor and focusing on your clients. You know, the biggest irony of imposter syndrome is that often strikes hardest when we're making our greatest impact. After 4 decades in this profession, I can tell you with certainty, your self-doubt is not weakness. It's truly evidence of how seriously you take your responsibilities to your clients and to the law. The goal is not to eliminate all uncertainty, but to use it as fuel rather than letting it become a barrier. So start today by implementing just one of those strategies I discussed. Your future as a confident, impactful lawyer awaits. And if you'd like to set up a courtesy coaching call to talk about this topic, the link will be in the show notes. Hook up with me. We can have a call and talk about how it applies to you. So thanks for joining me here today. And as always, please be well, be safe, and be free.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of the Free Lawyer Podcast. Wherever you are listening, if you enjoyed what I shared, please leave me a rating and review. I would appreciate hearing more about what you like best and what topics you might like me to cover in future episodes. If you are interested in experiencing a more fulfilling and a more successful life, please contact me at www.garymiles.net, where you can schedule a free discovery call with me so I can learn more about you, your challenges, and your dreams. I appreciate each and every one of you, and have a great rest of your day. Thanks to all of you for your support.